What happens when you demand a black woman give up her first-class seat? What if you and a complicit flight attendant tell her to move to the back of the plane simply because a white high-status passenger wants her spot? You might get away with it. You might even feel powerful, unless that woman isn't just another passenger. What if she's the one who signs every paycheck? What if she owns the airline? The words hang in the air, a promise of justice to come. A story of entitlement meeting its match of prejudice colliding with unexpected power. Stay tuned for an incredible story of shocking entitlement, breathtaking prejudice, and corporate karma so precise you won't believe it's real. This is what happens when the ultimate entitled passenger tries to bully the wrong woman, not knowing she just sealed her own fate and was talking to the CEO. Who among us hasn't witnessed or experienced someone being treated as less than because of how they look? Drop your city in the comments below. And if you believe in karma and justice, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Alexis Donovan was, by any metric, one of the most powerful women in the aviation industry. As the chief executive officer of Sky Global Airways, she controlled a fleet of over 800 aircraft, a workforce of 85,000, and a multi-billion-dollar budget. Her face had graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune. Her keynote speeches on logistics and market disruption were standing room only at industry conferences. But today, sitting in the public departure lounge of LAX Terminal 7, she was nobody. She wore no makeup. Her hair, usually in a sleek, commanding press, was pulled back into a simple, tight bun. She wore wire-rimmed glasses instead of her contacts, a pair of worn-in jeans, a simple gray turtleneck, and a pair of nondescript sneakers. The only item that hinted at her status was the simple, elegant watch on her wrist, a vintage Patek Philippe her father had left her, but it was discreet enough to be overlooked. She looked less like a CEO and more like a weary university professor grading papers during a layover. This was exactly the point. When Alexis was 7 years old, her father, James Donovan, had taken her to the observation deck at JFK International. They watched planes take off and land for hours, their massive bodies defying gravity with each ascent. Alexis. He'd said, his voice gentle but serious, one day all those planes might be yours. But remember something important. The person who matters most isn't the one sitting in first class. It's the last person to board who just wants to get home safely. Her father had built Sky Global from 3 leased regional jets into what was once a respected mid-tier carrier. We fly people, not status points, he used to say. His airline had been known for fair pricing and treating everyone with dignity. Alexis had taken his small company and transformed it into a global giant after his passing. Revenue had tripled. The fleet had expanded across continents. Sky Global now served 173 destinations worldwide. But lately she feared she had lost its soul. As she sat watching the crowds move through the terminal, Alexis reflected on the sacrifices she'd made to reach this position. As a black woman in aviation, she'd faced twice the scrutiny, worked 3 times as hard. In boardrooms full of older white men, she'd been mistaken for the secretary, the caterer, even the cleaning staff. She'd been told to tone down her ideas, to be less aggressive when she was merely being assertive. She'd overcome it all, climbing steadily upward, proving her worth with data strategy and unwavering determination. But the higher she climbed, the further she felt from her father's vision. Now she was on a mission to reclaim it. Sky Global Airways was in trouble. Not financially, not yet, but culturally. The stock was stable, the revenue charts pointed upward, but customer satisfaction scores were plummeting. The reports landing on Alexis's desk told a story of 2 airlines, one the high-gloss luxury brand she marketed, and another a rotting infrastructure of employee cynicism, organized bias, and a dangerous obsession with status over safety and service. The complaints were ugly. Passengers of color reported being passed over for upgrades. Muslim passengers reported random security checks at the gate far too often to be random. Wheelchair users described being treated as burdens rather than valued customers. And a disturbing number of reports mentioned a culture of entitlement among the senior flight crews who saved the best service for passengers in the Platinum Executive tier while treating standard economy passengers with thinly veiled disdain. Like I was invisible, one passenger wrote until a white businessman in a suit asked for the same thing, and suddenly they could see again. Another review: I've been flying Sky Global for 20 years. Never once have I been upgraded despite my loyalty points. I watched as the gate agent upgraded 3 white passengers who had less status than me. When I asked about it, I was told there must be a glitch in the system. A flight attendant's anonymous feedback. We're told unofficially to prioritize the right kind of customers for the best service. Everyone knows what that means, but nobody says it out loud. This was not the airline her father had built. This was not the company Alexis had promised to lead with integrity. So she was pulling an undercover boss move, but without the cameras. She had booked a multi-leg journey under an assumed name, Sarah Jones, on her own airline LAX to JFK to London back to Dallas. She was flying commercial, checking her own bags and watching. Her journey had already been illuminating. The check-in agent had been curt. The baggage handler she watched through the window had thrown her bag onto the conveyor belt with such force she winced. And now, in the public lounge, she saw a Sky Global gate agent snap at an elderly couple who asked a simple question about boarding zones. She diligently typed notes into a locked file on her phone. LAX T7 Gate 72B. Agent name, P. Lopez hostile tone, no eye contact, clear. Lack of empathy, needs immediate retraining. Her flight, SG-451 to JFK, was in first class. She always flew first on these audits because it was where the company's best service was supposed to be. It was also, paradoxically, where the worst behavior often festered. The first-class cabin was a microcosm of the status-obsessed culture she was trying to dismantle. She watched the Platinum Executive line begin to form a self-important huddle of people who had already been pre-boarding for 10 minutes. A woman at the front of the line, dripping in gold jewelry and wearing sunglasses indoors, was tapping her foot impatiently. Alexis sighed, her shoulders aching. She wasn't just tired from the observation. She was tired from the fight. The old guard on her board of directors, men who had been her father's colleagues, were fighting her modernization efforts. These New Age sensitivity trainings are a waste of money, Alexis, one of them, Philip Harrington, had boomed at the last meeting. You coddle the staff. You spoil the customers. You just need to run the planes on time. People are the business. Philip, she had, replied, her voice dangerously quiet. And our people are telling us we're failing. PR fluff, he'd scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. This trip was her ammunition. She wasn't just collecting anecdotes. She was collecting the data to save her father's legacy from the very people who claimed to protect it. At the front of the Platinum Executive line stood Eleanor Bradford, 52, a woman whose identity was built entirely on her husband's wealth. Eleanor was not old money. She was current money, and she wielded it like a freshly sharpened weapon. Her husband, William Bradford, ran one of the most ruthless private equity firms in the country. Their wealth was vast, abrasive, and new. Eleanor's status as a Platinum Executive 7-star million-miler with Sky Global was in her mind a title of nobility. And I told him, she announced, her voice carrying across the hushed lounge. I said, Richard, if that imbecile at Vanguard Capital can't close the Singapore deal, you fire him. You fire his entire family. She laughed, a sharp barking sound. Eleanor and William were flying to New York. They were in seats 1B and 1C. She despised 1B. It was the aisle. She always had the window. Always. Why, she had complained to her travel agent, who had assured her it was all taken care of. A lounge attendant, a young woman named Miranda, approached with a nervous smile. Mrs. Bradford, another glass of champagne. Is it the real champagne or that dreadful Prosecco you tried to pass off on me last time? Eleanor sneered, not looking up from her phone. The Dom Perignon, ma'am, as requested. Fine. And tell the gate agent I want a pre-board. I don't like to mix with the rush. Of course, Mrs. Bradford. We'll call you personally." Miranda scurried away. She hated when Eleanor Bradford flew. The entire staff did. She was a known tyrant famous for writing scathing career-ending reviews if her water wasn't the precise brand of Norwegian spring water she demanded. At the gate, another drama was unfolding. Nathan Whitfield, a senior flight attendant, was checking his manifest. He was handsome in a sharp, angular way, and he wore his Sky Global uniform like a bespoke suit. Nathan was ambitious. He had been with Sky Global for 4 years and was consumed with bitterness. He'd been passed over for a purser position head cabin attendant 3 times. He blamed the company's diversity quotas and soft management. He believed the old way was the best way, cater to the whales, and the rest will follow. He saw Eleanor Bradford's name on the first-class manifest. 1B. He smiled. He knew her well. She was demanding, yes, but she was also a direct line to the people who mattered. Impress her, and a good word might get back to management. He also saw her husband, William Bradford, in 1C. Big whales. Then he looked at 1A. Sarah Jones. He'd never heard of her. No status, no special requests, and nobody important probably used points to upgrade. He saw the gate agent, Ryan Martinez, looking overwhelmed. Ryan was new, barely 23, and one of the good ones. He was patiently explaining to an anxious family that their seats were together just across the aisle. "Ryan." Nathan snapped, striding over. "We need to fix a seating issue in first." Ryan looked up, startled. "What's wrong?" Nathan lowered his voice. "Mrs. Bradford needs 1A. It's her preferred seat. She's 7-star platinum." Ryan frowned. "But 1A is occupied. A Ms. Jones. She checked in online yesterday." Nathan's smile was thin. "So move her. Put her in premium economy or give her a travel voucher. Find a way." "But that's against policy," Ryan protested. "We can't downgrade without—" "Listen," Nathan cut him off. "Mrs. Bradford spends more on this airline in a month than you make in a year. Who do you think management wants us to keep happy? Some nobody or a 7-star? Ryan swallowed. I'll see what I can do." "Don't see. Do. Or I'll note it in your performance review." As Nathan walked away, Ryan felt a knot in his stomach. This wasn't the job he had signed up for. This wasn't the way people should be treated. But he needed this position. His mother's medical bills weren't going to pay themselves. He looked at the manifest again. Sarah Jones. 1A. He had a bad feeling about this. Now, boarding first-class cabin 1. The voice droned over the PA. Alexis stood up, blending into the small crowd. Just another face. She pulled her simple roller bag behind her and walked toward the gate, toward the flight that would change everything. As she approached the boarding gate, she noticed Ryan Martinez looking at her with a strange expression. He glanced down at his manifest, then back up, a conflict evident in his eyes. "Ms. Jones?" he asked hesitantly. "Yes, that's me." Alexis smiled warmly, handing over her boarding pass. Ryan seemed to be wrestling with something. Is this your first time flying with Sky Global?" "No," she replied simply. "But it's been a while." He nodded, scanning her pass. "Well, welcome back. We have you in seat 1A. That's window first row." "Thank you," Alexis said, sensing his discomfort. "Is something wrong with my seat?" No, he said quickly. "It's all good. Enjoy your flight." As she walked down the jetway, Alexis made another note on her phone. Ryan seemed like a good kid in a bad situation. Something was definitely off. The plane was a Boeing 787, one of the newest in Sky Global's fleet. Alexis had personally overseen its acquisition 2 years ago. She knew every detail of its construction, from the composite fuselage to the advanced environmental controls. But today she was experiencing it as a passenger, not as the CEO who had signed the $280 million purchase order. She found her seat in 1A and settled in. The first-class cabin was half empty, the typical pre-boarding chaos still to come. She stored her bag carefully, took out her book, a biography of her father's hero aviation pioneer Bessie Coleman, and placed it on her lap. A young flight attendant approached her name tag reading Sophia Ramirez. She smiled genuinely. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Jones. Can I get you a pre-departure beverage? Water juice or champagne water would be lovely." "Thank you," Alexis replied. Sophia nodded and moved to the galley. Alexis watched her work, noting her careful attention to detail and genuine demeanor. Another note went into her phone: F.A. Sophia Ramirez. Excellent initial service, attentive, authentic smile, good eye contact. From the galley, Alexis overheard Nathan Whitfield speaking quietly but intensely to Sophia. "The Bradfords are boarding soon. Mrs. Bradford gets the Dom, not the Veuve. Mr. Bradford gets the Macallan 18 with 2 ice cubes, not 1, not 3. 2. And make sure their amenity kits have the La Mer creams, not the standard ones." "But we don't stock different," Sophia began. "I brought special ones, just for them. This is how we maintain relationships with important people. You want to move up? Learn this." Alexis frowned. Special treatment beyond standard first-class service wasn't just favoritism, it was against company policy. It created inconsistent experiences, and worse, established a hierarchy among passengers who were all paying the same fare. Sophia returned with Alexis's water served properly on a small tray with a linen napkin. "Here you are, Ms. Jones. We'll be departing in about 20 minutes. Can I get you anything else for now?" "This is perfect. Thank you," Alexis said, then added, "Have you been with Sky Global long?" 6 months, Sophia replied. "Still learning, but I love it. What made you want to be a flight attendant?" Sophia's eyes lit up. "My grandmother was one of the first Hispanic flight attendants for Pan Am back in the 1960s. She faced a lot of challenges. I wanted to follow in her footsteps, but in a better time." "Is it a better time?" Alexis asked gently. Something flickered across Sophia's face. Doubt, perhaps, or resignation. "It's different. Excuse me, I need to prepare for the other passengers." As Sophia walked away, Alexis made another note. F.A. Sophia Ramirez. Hesitation when asked about current work environment. Follow up. 10 minutes later, Ryan Martinez stepped onto the plane, clipboard in hand. He approached Nathan and whispered something. Nathan frowned deeply, then turned to look directly at Alexis. His expression shifted from confusion to determination. Ryan moved hesitantly toward Alexis's seat. "Excuse me, Ms. Jones, I'm Ryan from the gate." "Yes, I remember." Alexis smiled. "What can I do for you?" Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "There's a situation with your seat. We have a very important Platinum executive member who has specifically requested this seat. Would it be possible for you to move to another seat? We could offer you premium economy and a $300 travel voucher for the inconvenience." Alexis tilted her head slightly. "That sounds like a downgrade. I specifically selected and paid for this seat. I understand and I apologize. It's just that Mrs. Bradford always sits in 1A and there seems to have been a mistake in the system." "I see. So, even though I booked this seat properly and checked in on time, I'm being asked to move because someone else wants it." Ryan looked miserable. "I know it's not ideal." Nathan stepped in, his voice smooth, but with an edge. "What my colleague is trying to say is that we have a special situation with a very valued 7-star member. We deeply appreciate your flexibility, Ms. Jones. It would be a personal favor to the crew." Alexis looked between them. "I'm comfortable where I am, thank you. My boarding pass says 1A, and that's where I'll stay." Nathan's smile tightened. "I understand, but perhaps you don't realize the level of loyalty we're discussing. Mrs. Bradford flies with us weekly, and I've chosen to fly with you today," Alexis replied evenly. "I'd like to remain in my assigned seat." Ryan looked ready to sink into the floor. Nathan's expression hardened. "I'll see what I can do," he said, curtly, turning on his heel. Ryan lingered a moment. "I'm sorry about this," he whispered. "This isn't right." "Then why are you doing it?" Alexis asked quietly. Ryan's voice faltered. "I've been warned about my performance reviews. I need this job. My mom's medical bills. I can't risk it. I understand difficult positions, Ryan, but remember how we act under pressure reveals our true character." He nodded, ashamed, and followed Nathan back to the galley. Alexis made a detailed note about the interaction, including Ryan's evident discomfort and Nathan's inappropriate pressure. This was worse than she had expected, not just passive bias, but active coercion within the ranks. Meanwhile, in the Zenith Lounge reserved for Sky Global's most elite flyers, Eleanor Bradford was holding court. She sat in a private alcove, her Louis Vuitton luggage arranged precisely around her like courtiers. "And I told the hotel manager she was saying to another lounge guest, I said, 'If your idea of a suite is a room with a glorified closet, perhaps you should stay in it yourself.' They upgraded me to the presidential suite within minutes." Her husband William barely looked up from his tablet. At 55, he had mastered the art of appearing to listen while completely tuning out his wife of 20 years. His focus was on a spreadsheet labeled Sky Global Acquisition Analysis, Phase 2. "Eleanor," he murmured, "we need to board soon." "They'll wait," she replied dismissively. "They always do." A lounge attendant approached. "Mrs. Bradford, your flight is ready for boarding. The crew has been notified of your arrival." Eleanor stood adjusting her designer blazer. "Finally. William, bring my carry-on." "I have a conference call in 5 minutes," he replied. "Then take it from the plane. I'm not touching that bag." William sighed and picked up both his briefcase and her carry-on. As they walked through the lounge, other travelers moved aside, some recognizing William from financial news programs, others simply responding to the aura of entitlement that surrounded the couple. Unknown to Eleanor Williams' company, Bradford Capital had been quietly acquiring shares of Sky Global for months. Their plan was to reach a controlling interest, install their own board members, then break up the airline's assets for massive profit. Today's flight was more than a trip to New York. It was reconnaissance. William wanted to assess the airline's premium service firsthand before making his final decision. But he needed to be careful. If Alexis Donovan caught wind of their plans before they secured enough shares, she could implement anti-takeover measures. So far, they'd managed to keep their stock purchases below the threshold that would trigger regulatory disclosure. As they approached the gate, William received a text from his lead analyst, Donovan, scheduled for Dallas all week, according to assistant. Coast clear. William smiled. Perfect. The CEO was safely out of the way. At the gate, Nathan was waiting personally. "Mr. and Mrs. Bradford, welcome. We're delighted to have you with us today." Eleanor barely acknowledged him. 1A had better be ready this time. Last flight, the pillow wasn't properly fluffed. About that, Nathan began carefully. "There seems to be a minor seating issue, but I'm addressing it immediately. We'll have you settled in 1A momentarily." Eleanor stopped cold. "What do you mean, issue? I specifically told my assistant to confirm 1A. Someone else was assigned that seat through an automated system error," Nathan explained smoothly. Ms. Jones. I'm working on relocating her." "Well, work faster," Eleanor snapped. "I don't care where you put her as long as she's out of my seat." William looked uncomfortable. "Eleanor." "If it's already occupied, don't start, William. I sit in 1A, always. It's the only way I can tolerate these flights." They proceeded down the jetway. Eleanor's heels clicking sharply against the floor, the sound like a countdown to confrontation. Back on the plane, Nathan was strategizing. This wasn't just about keeping a demanding passenger happy, it was about his career. Eleanor Bradford was friends with Philip Harrington on the board. A complaint from her could sink him. A commendation could finally get him the promotion he'd been denied. "Sophia," he said tersely, "prepare the Bradfords' special amenity kits and beverages. And find something for 1B, that's where Mrs. Bradford will sit temporarily until we sort this out. But what about Ms. Jones?" Sophia asked. "She doesn't seem like she wants to move. Leave that to me. When the Bradfords arrive, make a fuss. Create a distraction so I can speak to Ms. Jones privately." Sophia nodded reluctantly. Nathan had authority over her schedule, her routes, her evaluations. Crossing him wasn't an option if she wanted to keep this job. Nathan checked his watch. The Bradfords would board any minute. He needed this situation resolved before the other first-class passengers arrived. He approached Alexis again, this time with a different tactic. "Ms. Jones, I apologize for the confusion earlier. I've spoken with my supervisor and we'd like to offer you an upgraded experience in our premium economy cabin, plus a $500 travel voucher and our sincere apologies." Alexis looked up from her book. "That's still a downgrade from what I've paid for. I'm comfortable here, thank you." Nathan's professional veneer slipped slightly. "Mrs. Bradford is one of our most loyal customers. She specifically requires this seat for medical reasons." "Medical reasons?" Alexis raised an eyebrow. "That wasn't mentioned before. What medical condition requires seat 1A specifically?" Nathan faltered. "It's confidential, but very serious. If it's medical, shouldn't it be documented in the reservation system? I didn't see any seat blocking when I selected it yesterday." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Sometimes these special arrangements are handled personally." "I see," Alexis said. "So there's no actual medical necessity, just preference." "Ms. Jones, I'm trying to be reasonable here. Mrs. Bradford's comfort is a priority for this airline. And what about my comfort? Or that of any other passenger who follows the rules and books properly?" Before Nathan could respond, there was a commotion at the cabin entrance. Eleanor and William Bradford had arrived. Eleanor surveyed the first-class cabin like a general inspecting disappointing troops. Her gaze locked on Alexis in 1A, and her expression soured. "Nathan," she said loudly, not caring who heard. "Why is someone in my seat?" Nathan moved quickly to her side. "Mrs. Bradford, we're working on it. If you could take 1B temporarily." "1B." Her voice rose. "I specifically requested 1A. I always sit in 1A." William placed a restraining hand on her arm. "Eleanor, please. It's just a seat." She shook him off. "It is not just a seat. It is my seat. I've flown over 1,000,000 miles with this airline. I deserve respect." Other passengers were boarding now, the awkward scene becoming a public spectacle. Sophia tried to intervene, offering champagne to the Bradfords, but Eleanor waved her away. "I'm not sitting anywhere until this is resolved." Nathan nodded nervously. "Of course, Mrs. Bradford. Let me handle it." He turned to Alexis, his voice now less friendly, more commanding. "Ms. Jones, I need to insist that you relocate. We have a situation that requires your cooperation." Alexis closed her book slowly and looked directly at Eleanor, then at Nathan. "What exactly is the situation that I'm being asked to give up my properly booked seat because someone else wants it?" Eleanor stepped forward. "Do you know who I am?" "I don't believe we've been introduced," Alexis replied calmly. "I am Eleanor Bradford. My husband and I have Platinum Executive 7-star status. We've flown over 2 million miles with Sky Global. I always sit in 1A. "I'm Sarah Jones," Alexis replied. "I booked my ticket, selected my seat, and checked in on time. I'm sitting where my boarding pass says I should be." Eleanor's face flushed with anger. "This is outrageous." "Nathan, do something." Nathan stepped closer to Alexis, his voice low but hard. "Ms. Jones, I don't want to involve the captain, but if you continue to be uncooperative, I will have no choice. This could delay the flight for everyone." William Bradford, looking increasingly uncomfortable with his wife's behavior, attempted to defuse the situation. "Eleanor, please. Let's just take 1B and 1C today. No, Eleanor snapped. I get airsick unless I'm by the window. She can move. She's nobody. The words hung in the air, revealing the ugly truth beneath the veneer of medical necessity and loyal customer rhetoric. It wasn't about loyalty or health. It was about power, about who was deemed worthy and who wasn't. Alexis sat motionless, her face a careful mask. But inside she was cataloging every word, every micro-expression building the case that would soon transform her airline. Mrs. Bradford, she said evenly, I understand you're accustomed to getting your way, but I'm not moving from my assigned seat. Eleanor turned to Nathan, her voice imperious. I want her removed from the plane. Now. Nathan hesitated, aware they were crossing into dangerous territory. Removing a passenger without cause could trigger FAA penalties. But Eleanor Bradford's influence could end his career with one phone call. Ms. Jones, he said, his tone now openly hostile. I need to ask you one last time to cooperate. If not, I'll need to involve the captain and security. Alexis looked at him steadily. Are you threatening to have me removed because I won't give up my rightfully assigned seat to another passenger who simply wants it? I'm informing you of protocol for uncooperative passengers, he replied stiffly. Interesting. Please do involve the captain. I'd like to hear the official Sky Global policy on this matter. As Nathan reached for the interphone to call the cockpit, Sophia Ramirez watched with growing alarm. This wasn't right. The woman in 1A had done nothing wrong. She caught Alexis's eye, an unspoken apology in her expression. In that moment, Alexis made a decision. This had gone far enough. It was time to end the charade, but not before Nathan and Eleanor dug themselves in a little deeper. The standoff in first class had drawn the attention of every passenger boarding the plane. People slowed as they passed, some openly staring, others pretending not to notice while catching every word. Captain James Wilson, a 20-year veteran pilot with Sky Global, had been alerted to a situation in the cabin. He'd worked with Nathan before and knew the flight attendant's tendency to escalate minor issues, especially when high-status passengers were involved. Nathan, he said over the interphone, what's the problem? We have an uncooperative passenger in first class refusing to accommodate a platinum executive member's seating needs. The captain sighed. Is this a safety issue? Not exactly, but then handle it without me. We're on schedule for an on-time departure. Keep it that way. Nathan's face tightened at this lack of support. He turned back to the standoff in the cabin. Eleanor Bradford had settled temporarily into 1B, but she wasn't letting the matter drop. This is ridiculous, she muttered loudly. I pay tens of thousands a year to this airline. I deserve better treatment. William had taken 1C and was already on his phone, seemingly trying to distance himself from the drama. But Alexis noticed he kept glancing her way, assessing, calculating. Nathan Eleanor called. I've just texted Philip Harrington on your board of directors. He wants to know why I'm being disrespected on his airline. At this, Nathan paled slightly. Philip Harrington was old guard powerful, with direct influence over promotions and firing. This was escalating beyond a simple seating dispute. Alexis watched it all unfold with calm detachment. Every statement, every threat was being mentally recorded. The mention of Harrington was particularly interesting evidence of how certain board members were perpetuating a culture of special treatment and intimidation. Sophia approached with pre-departure beverages. Champagne for you, Mrs. Bradford, she offered. The Dom Perignon, not that other swill, Eleanor replied without looking up. And for you, Ms. Jones. Sophia continued, her voice professional but with a hint of extra warmth. Water is fine, thank you, Alexis replied with a smile. Eleanor snorted. At least she knows her place with beverage choices. Sophia stiffened but said nothing, moving away to serve other passengers. Alexis made another mental note. Eleanor's comment. Sophia's reaction, the clear discomfort of nearby passengers, all of it building a picture of a toxic culture that had been allowed to fester. Nathan returned, leaning close to Alexis's seat. Ms. Jones, the situation has escalated. Mrs. Bradford has contacted a board member. I'm giving you one last chance to cooperate before this affects your future flying privileges with Sky Global. Alexis looked at him with genuine curiosity. Are you threatening to place me on a blacklist because I won't give up my assigned seat? I'm informing you of potential consequences for your continued disruption. Interesting. And is this standard Sky Global policy to threaten passengers who sit in their assigned seats? Nathan's patience was visibly wearing thin. Mrs. Bradford is a special case. Why? Because she's white, wealthy, connected. What exactly makes her more entitled to my seat than I am? The bluntness of the question, especially the reference to race, caused Nathan to step back as if struck. Several nearby passengers murmured. Someone had started recording with a phone. That's not what I said. Nathan stammered, suddenly aware of the audience. This has nothing to do with race. Then what does it have to do with, please explain to me and everyone listening why I should give up my seat? Nathan looked to Eleanor for support, but she was typing furiously on her phone, presumably updating Harrington on the situation. William Bradford finally intervened, leaning across his wife. Ma'am, perhaps we could discuss this reasonably. My wife has certain preferences. We'd be happy to compensate you personally for the inconvenience. You want to pay me to give up my seat? Alexis clarified. If that would resolve this situation, yes. Name your price. My price, Alexis said slowly, is dignity and respect. Can you put a dollar amount on that? Mr. Bradford William looked genuinely perplexed. This wasn't how these situations usually resolved in his experience. Money typically fixed everything. An older white passenger across the aisle, Joseph Turner, spoke up. I was a pilot for 40 years before I retired. Never once did we remove a passenger from their assigned seat just because someone else wanted it. This isn't right. Thank you, sir, Alexis acknowledged. But I believe they're prepared to make an exception in my case. Nathan looked increasingly uncomfortable as more passengers began to openly watch and comment. This was spiraling out of control. We need to push back from the gate soon, he said tightly. Mrs. Bradford, perhaps just for this flight, no. Eleanor cut him off. I've spoken to Philip. He's calling the head of operations now. She'll be removed. Alexis raised an eyebrow. Removed for what exactly? For being difficult, Eleanor snapped. For not knowing your place. The mask slipped completely with those words. A collective intake of breath came from those close enough to hear. Sophia, returning to collect glasses, nearly dropped her tray. My place, Alexis repeated softly. And where exactly do you think that is, Mrs. Bradford? The confrontation had reached a breaking point. Nathan's phone buzzed a text from his supervisor in operations handle Bradford situation now. Harrington is breathing down our necks. Nathan straightened his uniform and approached Alexis once more, but this time his demeanor had changed. There was no more pretense of courtesy. Ms. Jones, I need you to gather your belongings and follow me to another seat. No, Alexis said simply. This isn't a request. It's a directive from airline management. Based on what authority? As senior cabin crew, I have the authority to reassign seats for the comfort and convenience of all passengers. The comfort and convenience of all passengers, Alexis emphasized. Or just those with connections to your board of directors. Nathan's jaw tightened. Ms. Jones, if you don't comply, I'll be forced to... To what? Alexis interrupted. Have me removed on what grounds I've created no disturbance. I've threatened no one. I've simply sat in my assigned seat. Eleanor stood up suddenly. This is absurd. Move now. She pointed to the back of the plane. Go sit with your kind in economy. This isn't the place for you. The racial undertone was unmistakable. Several passengers gasped. William tugged at his wife's sleeve, mortified. "Eleanor, for God's sake," he hissed. But she was beyond caring about appearances. "I've had enough of this charade. Nathan, call security. She needs to be removed." Nathan hesitated. Eleanor's overt prejudice had changed the dynamic. This was no longer about airline policy or customer satisfaction. This was about discrimination, plain and simple. Sophia stepped forward. "Nathan, we can't do this. It's wrong." "Stay out of it," he snapped. "This isn't your concern." "It absolutely is my concern," Sophia countered, her voice shaking but determined. "We're supposed to treat all passengers with respect. This goes against everything in our training." Nathan glared at her. "Consider yourself written up for insubordination. Now step back." Ryan Martinez, who had been watching from the galley, moved forward as well. "She's right, Nathan. This isn't policy. It's not right. Both of you back to your stations," Nathan ordered. "I'm handling this." Turning to Alexis, he made one final attempt. "Ms. Jones, this will be easier for everyone if you cooperate. We can make this worth your while." Alexis looked him directly in the eye. "I'm not moving, and I suggest you think very carefully about your next action." Eleanor had had enough. She pushed past Nathan and stood over Alexis, pointing a manicured finger. "Move. 1A is not for you, Mrs. Bradford." Alexis replied calmly, "You're the kind of person who thinks first class is about the seat. It's not. It's about character. And right now, everyone on this plane can see which one of us belongs here." Eleanor's face contorted with rage. She reached for Alexis's book, snatching it from her lap. "Get out of my seat, you." Nathan grabbed Eleanor's arm. "Mrs. Bradford, please, we can't." Eleanor shook him off and turned back to Alexis. "Do you know who my husband is? Do you know what he could do to you with one phone call?" "No," Alexis replied. "But I know what I can do to this airline with one phone call. Would you like to see?" The tension in the cabin was palpable. Other passengers had stopped pretending not to watch. Several had phones out recording. Joseph Turner, the retired pilot, had stood up clearly, preparing to intervene if things escalated further. Nathan was caught in an impossible position. Eleanor Bradford's behavior had crossed multiple lines, but her connections made her untouchable, or so he thought. Sophia and Ryan were openly defying his authority, undermining his control of the situation, and the woman in 1A remained calmly immovable, showing no signs of intimidation. This has gone far enough, he decided. He picked up the cabin phone again. "Captain, we have a situation requiring removal of a passenger." The captain's voice came through audible to those nearby. "On what grounds Nathan disruptive behavior and refusal to comply with crew instructions? Is there a safety concern?" Nathan hesitated. "Not exactly, but then there are no grounds for removal. FAA regulations are clear. Sir Mrs. Bradford has contacted board member Harrington directly. He's requesting intervention." There was a pause. "The board has no operational authority over this aircraft. I'm the captain. My decision is final." Nathan's face flushed with embarrassment and anger. He hung up the phone roughly. Eleanor, who had overheard the exchange, was furious. "This is outrageous. I'm calling Philip back right now." She pulled out her phone and dialed, putting it on speaker deliberately so everyone could hear her influence in action. "Philip, it's Eleanor. They're refusing to move her. This is unacceptable." Philip Harrington's voice came through clearly. "Don't worry, Eleanor. I've spoken with George Sullivan at operations. He's contacting the gate agent to have her removed before pushback. Just sit tight." "Thank you, Philip. I knew I could count on you." She ended the call with a triumphant look at Alexis. "You heard that. It's over. Security will be here any minute to escort you off." Alexis didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached for her own phone. "What are you doing?" Eleanor demanded. "Making my own call." Alexis replied, dialing. "As I mentioned, I also know some people." The phone rang twice before being answered. Alexis put it on speaker. Jessica. It's me. A woman's professional voice responded immediately. Yes, Ms. Donovan. What can I do for you? Eleanor frowned at the name discrepancy, but was too focused on her victory to register its significance. I'm on SG 441 to JFK. There's a situation developing. Please activate Protocol Skyfall immediately. Understood. Systems ready. Anything else? Yes. Please inform George Sullivan that he should expect to clear his desk within the hour. And contact legal, we'll need them standing by. Already done. The team is assembled and waiting. Thank you, Jessica. Alexis ended the call and turned to face Eleanor and Nathan, whose expressions had shifted from triumph to confusion. Who exactly did you just call? Nathan asked suspiciously. My assistant Alexis replied. Jessica Hernandez, Chief of Staff at Sky Global Airways Executive Offices. Nathan's face drained of color. What did you just say? Eleanor scoffed. Nice try. Pretending to know people. Your bluff won't work. Alexis smiled for the first time since the confrontation began. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small leather case. From it, she extracted a business card and handed it to Nathan. He read it, then read it again, his hands beginning to tremble. What does it say? Eleanor demanded. What's going on? Nathan handed her the card, his voice barely audible. It says, Alexis Donovan, Chief Executive Officer, Sky Global Airways. The revelation landed like a thunderclap in the cabin. Eleanor Bradford's face went from flushed anger to ashen shock in seconds. William Bradford, who had been half listening while typing on his phone, froze mid-keystroke. That's impossible, Eleanor stammered. Alexis Donovan is in Dallas. All week. We checked. Clearly, Alexis replied, your intelligence needs updating. Nathan Whitfield looked like he might faint. Ms. Donovan, I didn't know. Evidently, Alexis cut him off, her voice still calm but now carrying undeniable authority. And that was precisely the point, Mr. Whitfield. Around the cabin, whispers spread like wildfire. She's the CEO. That's the CEO. She owns the airline. Sofia Ramirez's eyes were wide with realization. Ryan Martinez had appeared at the cabin entrance, his expression a mixture of shock and vindication. Joseph Turner, the retired pilot, broke into spontaneous applause. Now, that's what I call undercover boss. Alexis stood, and the entire cabin seemed to hold its breath. Mr. Whitfield, is there a problem with my seating arrangement? Nathan swallowed hard. No, Miss Donovan, no problem at all. I thought not. She turned to Eleanor Bradford, who remained frozen in disbelief. Mrs. Bradford. I believe you were about to call me something before you were interrupted. Please continue. I'm curious to hear what term you were going to use. Eleanor's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. William Bradford finally snapped to attention, his crisis management instincts kicking in. Ms. Donovan, there's clearly been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Mr. Bradford. Everything has been perfectly clear. Crystal clear, in fact, including your company's quiet acquisition of Sky Global shares over the past 3 months. William blanched. Their takeover plan was supposed to be completely confidential. Yes, we've been aware of Bradford Capital's moves since the beginning. Alexis continued. Your Operation Takeover isn't as discreet as you thought. But we can discuss that later. Right now, we have more immediate concerns. She addressed the cabin at large, her voice carrying to every corner without raising it. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption to your journey. What you've witnessed here is exactly why I was on this flight today. For too long, a culture of bias, entitlement, and discrimination has infected parts of our airline contrary to everything Sky Global was founded to represent. She looked directly at Nathan. Mr. Whitfield, you are relieved of duty effective immediately. Please gather your belongings and exit the aircraft. You can't, he began. I can, and I have. Your conduct today violated federal aviation regulations, Sky Global's code of conduct, and basic human decency. Security will escort you off the plane." As if on cue, 2 airline security officers appeared at the cabin door. Jessica Hernandez had indeed activated Protocol Skyfall, the company's emergency response system designed for just such situations. Ms. Ramirez Alexis continued, "Please take over as lead cabin attendant for this flight." Sophia straightened her expression, determined. "Yes, Ms. Donovan." Alexis turned back to the Bradfords. "As for you, Mrs. Bradford, your platinum executive status is permanently revoked. You are no longer welcome on any Sky Global flight." Eleanor finally found her voice. "You can't do that. Do you know how much money we spend with this airline? Not enough to buy the right to discriminate against other passengers," Alexis replied. "Mr. Bradford, you might want to reconsider your acquisition strategy. By the time this flight lands, your trading activities regarding Sky Global shares will be under review by the SEC." William stood abruptly. "You're making a very serious accusation." "No, Mr. Bradford. I'm making a very serious statement of fact. Now, you have 2 choices. You can both leave this flight quietly, or you can stay with Mrs. Bradford in 1B, where her boarding pass assigns her, and we can continue this conversation with federal authorities upon landing." Eleanor looked to her husband, expecting him to fight back to use his influence. Instead, William was already gathering his things. "Eleanor, we're leaving," he said tersely. "William, you can't be serious. She can't. She can. She just did. And if we don't leave now, we'll be having our next conversation with federal agents." He turned to Alexis. "Ms. Donovan will disembark voluntarily." Eleanor stood shaking with rage, but finally recognizing the complete reversal of power. As they moved toward the exit, William paused. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Oh, I think it is," Alexis replied. "But you're welcome to try your luck with our legal team. They've been expecting your call." The security officers escorted Nathan, Eleanor, and William off the aircraft. As they disappeared down the jetway, a strange silence fell over the cabin, followed by another round of spontaneous applause. Alexis remained standing, her calm demeanor unchanged by the confrontation's resolution. She addressed the remaining passengers once more. "Again, I apologize for the disruption. Sophia will ensure you all receive premium service for the remainder of your journey. And I assure you the Sky Global you experience from this day forward will be very different from the one you boarded today." In the terminal, events were unfolding rapidly. Eleanor Bradford was creating a scene at the customer service desk, demanding to speak with someone who actually matters. William Bradford, meanwhile, was on his phone with his legal team, his face grim as he received news about the SEC inquiry that had miraculously materialized in the past 30 minutes. Nathan Whitfield sat alone in a corner staring at his phone as it filled with messages from colleagues who had somehow already heard about his dismissal. His career in aviation, built over 9 years, had imploded in less than 20 minutes. Back on the aircraft, the mood had transformed. Sophia moved through the cabin with graceful efficiency, treating each passenger with equal respect and warmth. Ryan assisted in economy class, making a point to check on a family with young children who had seemed stressed during boarding. Alexis observed it all, making notes on her phone. This wasn't just about punishing bad behavior. It was about recognizing and nurturing the right instincts in employees who could lead the cultural transformation. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Alexis noticed a young woman across the aisle watching her with undisguised curiosity. After a moment's hesitation, the woman leaned over. "Excuse me, Ms. Donovan, I'm Mia Torres from the Harvard Business Review. I'm actually on my way to interview you tomorrow at your office in New York." Alexis smiled. "It seems you've gotten a preview of our discussion topic, organizational culture and leadership in action." Mia nodded. I couldn't have scripted a better case study. Would you mind if I asked a few questions now off the record? Go ahead. Was this planned? The undercover evaluation. The evaluation was planned. The confrontation was not, but it provided exactly the evidence I needed. And the Bradfords. Did you know about their connection to your board? We've been monitoring Philip Harrington's outside contacts for some time. The Bradford connection was a known variable. Their attempt to acquire controlling interest in Sky Global, however, required direct confirmation. Mia looked impressed. So this was both a culture audit and a counter-corporate espionage operation? Alexis smiled slightly. Let's just say I believe in efficiency. Their conversation was interrupted by a gentle chime as Sophia's voice came over the PA system. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Sophia Ramirez, your lead flight attendant for today's journey to New York. I want to personally thank you for flying with us and to assure you that everyone on this aircraft will receive our full attention and respect. If there's anything we can do to make your flight more comfortable, please don't hesitate to ask. The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. Passengers exchanged glances, many smiling at this departure from the usual scripted announcements. Alexis nodded approvingly. Sophia had natural leadership qualities. With the right mentoring, she could go far. Ms. Donovan Mia continued what happens next. For the airline, I mean. A complete recalibration, Alexis replied. What you saw today wasn't an isolated incident. It was symptomatic of a cultural drift away from our founding principles. My father built Sky Global on the belief that everyone deserves dignity in the skies. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that. And you believe you can change it. I know we can. Because despite what you witnessed today, there are far more Sophias and Ryans in our company than there are Nathans and Harringtons. They've just been operating in a system that rewarded the wrong behaviors. Change the system, and you free people to do what's right. Mia nodded thoughtfully. I'd like to include this in our interview tomorrow if that's all right. I look forward to it. As Mia returned to her work, Alexis's phone buzzed with another message from Jessica Bradford Capital stock down 4% in after-hours trading. Rumors of SEC investigation spreading. William Bradford has canceled his meetings in New York and is returning to Dallas tonight. Alexis smiled slightly. William Bradford was discovering the hard way that attempting to take over her airline had been a critical miscalculation. While the plane continued toward New York, events on the ground were accelerating. At Sky Global's headquarters in Dallas, Jessica Hernandez had convened an emergency meeting of the executive team. As you've all heard by now, she began CEO Alexis Donovan experienced firsthand the cultural issues we've been tracking. She's authorized immediate implementation of the True Sky Global initiative. The executives exchanged glances. The initiative had been developed in secret over the past 6 months, a comprehensive overhaul of company policies, training, and incentive structures designed to eliminate bias and restore the customer-first philosophy that James Donovan had established. This isn't a drill or a PR exercise, Jessica continued. As of this moment, all Platinum Executive Special Privileges beyond standard first-class service are suspended. The status-based upgrade algorithm is being replaced with the new equity-balanced system, and the board's preferred customer list is being permanently deleted from our database. One executive raised a hand. Philip Harrington won't take this lying down. Ms. Donovan is prepared for that, Jessica replied coolly. An emergency board meeting has been called for tomorrow morning. I suggest you all prepare your departments for significant changes. Meanwhile, at JFK Airport, ground staff were scrambling to prepare for Alexis Donovan's arrival. The story had spread through the company's internal channels, growing with each retelling. By the time SG-451 was halfway to New York, everyone from baggage handlers to executive lounges knew the CEO was coming, and that she was on the warpath. Back on the plane, Alexis used the quiet time to finalize her strategy. The confrontation had provided perfect justification for the sweeping changes she'd been planning. With passenger videos already circulating online, the narrative was taking shape organically. Sky Global's CEO takes stand against discrimination on her own airline. Sophia approached with a fresh bottle of water. Ms. Donovan will be beginning our descent into JFK in about 30 minutes. Is there anything you need before then? Thank you, Sophia. I'm fine, but I would like to speak with you after we land. I think you have a future beyond the cabin if you're interested. Sophia's eyes widened. Yes, I'd be very interested. Good. Tell Ryan I'd like to speak with him as well. As Sophia moved away, Alexis turned her attention to her phone where messages were still pouring in. The most significant came from the chair of Sky Global's board, Elaine Fisher. Alexis' news of today's events has reached the entire board. Philip Harrington is making noise, but he's isolated. The majority stands with you. We await your full briefing tomorrow. This was the support Alexis needed. Elaine had been her father's closest ally on the board and had championed Alexis's appointment as CEO 5 years ago. With her backing, even Harrington's old guard faction couldn't stop what was coming. The plane began its descent into New York, the sprawling city appearing through breaks in the clouds. Alexis looked out at the skyline and felt a renewed sense of purpose. Today had confirmed her suspicions and provided the catalyst for change. Tomorrow would begin the transformation of Sky Global into the airline her father had always envisioned. As the wheels touched down at JFK, the cabin erupted in spontaneous applause, partly for the smooth landing, but mostly, Alexis suspected, for the drama they had all witnessed. People loved seeing justice in action, especially when it involved the powerful being held accountable. Sophia's voice came over the PA system. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport. Local time is 2:45 p.m. and the temperature is 72 degrees. On behalf of Captain Wilson and the entire crew, I want to thank you for flying with Sky Global today. We know you have choices when you fly, and we're grateful you chose us. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until the captain turns off the seatbelt sign. She paused, then added something unscripted. And thank you for being part of a historic flight. We hope to see you again on the new Sky Global. As the plane taxied to the gate, Alexis saw something unexpected through the window. A small gathering of Sky Global's staff waiting on the tarmac. Word had spread faster than she anticipated. The transformation was already beginning. The Sky Global Airways boardroom in Dallas was tense the following morning. 14 board members sat around the polished mahogany table, dividing roughly into two factions, those aligned with Philip Harrington and the Old Guard, and those supporting Alexis Donovan's vision for the company. Alexis sat at the head of the table, Jessica Hernandez at her side. Across from her, Philip Harrington, 70, with silver hair and an expression of barely contained fury, drummed his fingers on the table's surface. This emergency meeting of the Sky Global Airways Board of Directors is now in session, announced Elaine Fisher, the board chair. Our agenda today concerns yesterday's events on Flight SG-451 and the subsequent actions taken by CEO Alexis Donovan. Philip Harrington couldn't contain himself. What Alexis has done is reckless and unauthorized. She's launched a so-called initiative without board approval, fired a senior employee without due process, and antagonized one of our most valuable customers. Are you referring to Eleanor Bradford? Alexis asked calmly. The passenger who demanded another customer be removed because of her own prejudice. I'm referring to a platinum executive 7-star who, along with her husband, spends hundreds of thousands of dollars with this airline annually, I see. Alexis nodded to Jessica, who activated the boardroom's display screen. Before we continue, I think the board should see exactly what happened yesterday. The screen filled with composite footage from multiple passenger videos showing the confrontation from various angles. Eleanor Bradford's voice came through clearly. Go sit with your kind in economy. This isn't the place for you. The racial undertone was unmistakable. Several board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The video continued, showing Nathan Whitfield's attempts to move Alexis despite her valid ticket, his threat to involve security, and finally the revelation of Alexis's identity. When the video ended, the room was silent. Even Philip Harrington seemed temporarily at a loss for words. "This is what Sky Global has become," Alexis said quietly. "A place where wealth and connections trump dignity and respect, where staff feel empowered to discriminate if the customer demanding it has enough status points." Elaine Fisher spoke up. "Philip, did you instruct operations to remove a passenger based on Eleanor Bradford's request?" Harrington's face flushed. "I merely suggested that a valued customer's preferences should be accommodated. By removing another passenger from their assigned seat," Elaine pressed. "Based on what criteria?" "It wasn't about criteria. It was about keeping an important customer happy." "So you admit it?" Alexis interjected. "You were willing to violate Federal Aviation Regulations company policy and basic human decency to please someone with status. That's how business works." Harrington slammed his hand on the table. "We cater to those who matter." The room fell silent again, but this time the silence had a different quality. Harrington had just vocalized the toxic philosophy that had infected Sky Global, the very mindset Alexis was determined to eliminate. That, Alexis said firmly, is precisely the problem. And it's why I've implemented the True Sky Global initiative immediately without delay for board deliberation. She distributed tablets to each board member containing the complete initiative documentation. This comprehensive plan addresses the cultural rot that's infected our company. It reaffirms our commitment to treating every customer with dignity and respect, regardless of status. It overhauls our training, evaluation, and promotion practices to reward integrity over obsequiousness. And it establishes clear, immutable standards of conduct that apply to everyone from baggage handlers to this boardroom. Harrington scoffed. "This is nothing but PR fluff disguised as reform. It will alienate our highest value customers and devastate our revenue." Actually, Alexis countered our analysis suggests the opposite. She nodded to Jessica, who changed the display to show a detailed financial projection. "What you're seeing is the financial impact of our current culture. Customer complaints up 32% year over year. Employee turnover up 28%. Legal settlements for discrimination claims up 47%. And most tellingly, first-time customer retention down 23%. She advanced to the next slide. "We're bleeding new customers because they experience the toxic culture on their first flight and choose not to return. Meanwhile, we're coddling a small percentage of high-status customers who demand increasingly preferential treatment, driving up operational costs and staff turnover." The data was compelling. Several board members who had seemed skeptical were now studying the projections with concern. "The True Sky Global initiative isn't just ethically right, it's financially necessary," Alexis continued. "We're not eliminating premium services. We're eliminating the entitlement culture that's destroying our company from within." Elaine Fisher addressed the board. "I've reviewed the initiative in detail. It represents a return to the founding principles of Sky Global established by James Donovan. It's both morally sound and strategically smart." Philip Harrington wasn't giving up. "This is a direct repudiation of the strategies that built this airline into what it is today, and I won't stand for it." "Then don't," Alexis replied simply. "That's why I've called for a vote of no confidence in Philip Harrington and his immediate removal from the board of directors." Harrington's face went from red to purple. "You can't do that." Board Bylaws Section 7, Paragraph 3. Alexis recited from memory. "Any board member who directs company employees to violate federal regulations may be subject to immediate removal by majority vote. You instructed George Sullivan to remove a passenger without cause in direct violation of FAA regulations. That alone is grounds for removal." She paused, then added, "But there's more. Your repeated communications with the Bradfords regarding Sky Global's internal operations while they were actively attempting to acquire controlling interest in our company constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty. Harrington went pale. That's an outrageous accusation. Jessica changed the display again, showing records of phone calls, text messages, and emails between Harrington and the Bradfords spanning the past 6 months. How did you get these? Harrington demanded. Our cybersecurity team has been monitoring unusual board member communications since we detected the first signs of Bradford Capital's acquisition attempt, Alexis explained. Your communications with them triggered multiple red flags. Harrington looked around the table seeking allies, but found few willing to meet his gaze. The evidence was damning. I call for an immediate vote, Elaine Fisher announced. All those in favor of removing Philip Harrington from the board of directors, raise your hand. One by one, hands went up. Even some of Harrington's traditional allies recognized the indefensible nature of his actions. The final count, 11-3. The vote passes, Elaine declared. Philip Security will escort you from the building. Thank you for your years of service. Harrington stood shaking with rage. This isn't over, Alexis. You've made powerful enemies today. No, Philip, she replied calmly. I've exposed enemies who were already there hiding behind handshakes and status points. There's a difference. As security led him from the room, Alexis addressed the remaining board members. Now we move forward. The true Sky Global initiative begins today. Those who support it will help shape the future of this airline. Those who resist it should consider their positions carefully. She stood. This meeting is adjourned. We have an airline to transform. In the days that followed, Sky Global Airways underwent the most significant transformation in its history. George Sullivan, the operations director who had collaborated with Harrington, was terminated for cause. His entire management team was placed under review, with several members subsequently removed for fostering a culture of discrimination and preferential treatment. The company's training programs were completely overhauled under Sofia Ramirez's guidance. Every employee, from executives to baggage handlers, underwent new training focused on dignity, respect, and equitable treatment for all customers. Ryan Martinez led the reform of gate procedures, eliminating the preferential boarding lanes that had created visible hierarchies among passengers. First class and premium customers still boarded first, but without the ostentatious segregation that had previously defined the process. Most controversially, Alexis eliminated the Platinum Executive 7-star status tier entirely. The highest status level was renamed simply Frequent Flyer Plus, and its benefits were carefully recalibrated to provide genuine travel enhancements without creating a class of untouchable whales who could demand special treatment. The changes weren't implemented without resistance. Several high-status customers canceled their accounts in protest. A few longtime employees resigned rather than adapt to the new culture. Industry analysts questioned whether Sky Global was committing financial suicide by alienating its highest-spending customers. But something unexpected happened alongside the criticism, a wave of public support. The videos of Alexis standing up to discrimination on her own airline had gone viral, generating millions of views and thousands of supportive comments. New customers began choosing Sky Global specifically because of its public stance on dignity and respect. 3 weeks after the incident, Alexis sat in her office reviewing the latest data with Jessica. Bookings are up 12% overall, Jessica reported. We've lost about 8% of our ultra-high status customers, but we've gained 17% in new business. Employee applications have increased by 40%. And our satisfaction scores are trending upward for the first time in 3 years. And the Bradford situation, Alexis asked. William Bradford's attempted takeover has collapsed. The SEC investigation into their trading activities has scared off their investment partners. Bradford Capital's stock is down 23% since the news broke. Alexis nodded. And Eleanor's social media has not been kind. She's resigned from 3 charity boards after other members threatened to leave if she stayed. Their country club membership is reportedly under review. I take no pleasure in their downfall, Alexis said quietly. But actions have consequences, especially when they're built on prejudice and entitlement. She stood and walked to the window overlooking the Dallas skyline. Have Sophia and Ryan arrived yet? They're waiting in the conference room, along with the other team members you requested. Good. It's time to begin Phase 2. In the large conference room, a diverse group of employees from all levels of the company waited. Sophia and Ryan sat together, still somewhat amazed by their rapid ascent from frontline employees to corporate change agents. Beside them were representatives from every department: baggage handling, catering, maintenance, finance, marketing, and HR. Alexis entered and took her place at the head of the table. Thank you all for coming. You're here because you've demonstrated the values that will define the new Sky Global. Together, we're going to build something remarkable, an airline that treats every customer and employee with dignity without sacrificing excellence or profitability. She activated a display showing the company's original logo from her father's era, alongside a slightly modernized version. This is our new identity, a return to our roots, but with eyes firmly on the future. Our tagline, Sky for All. The meeting lasted 4 hours as they mapped out the next phases of transformation. When it concluded, Alexis asked Sophia and Ryan to stay behind. I want to thank you both again, she said once they were alone. Your courage that day made all of this possible. We just did what was right, Sophia replied. Which is precisely why you're now leading our training reform. Integrity can't be taught as effectively as it can be modeled. You both model it beautifully. Ryan shook his head in amazement. 3 weeks ago, I was afraid to speak up because I needed my job. Now I'm helping reshape the entire company. It's surreal. It's what happens when organizations value the right things, Alexis said. When we prioritize character over status, amazing transformations become possible both for companies and for individuals. She walked them to the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow we continue building the airline my father always envisioned and that our customers deserve. William Bradford sat in his corner office at Bradford Capital watching his company's stock price continue its steady decline. The SEC investigation had found enough questionable trading activity to warrant a formal inquiry, sending investors fleeing. His phone rang his personal line, which almost never happened during business hours. William Bradford, he answered curtly. Mr. Bradford, this is Jeremy Stevens from Goldman Sachs. I'm afraid I need to inform you that in light of recent events, we've decided to withdraw from our proposed partnership on the Williams infrastructure project. William closed his eyes. The Williams project was supposed to be Bradford Capital's salvation, a $1.2 billion development that would have generated enough revenue to offset their recent losses. Jeremy, be reasonable. The SEC inquiry is a formality. They won't find anything substantive. Nevertheless, our risk assessment committee has made its decision. I'm sorry, William. Perhaps we can revisit the partnership once these issues are resolved. The call ended, leaving William staring at the skyline through his floor-to-ceiling windows. This was the third major partner to pull out in the past week. The attempted Sky Global takeover had backfired catastrophically, and it was all because his wife couldn't accept sitting in 1B instead of 1A. Eleanor had barely left their Dallas mansion since the incident. After the videos went viral, she'd become a social pariah overnight. Airline Karen was the kindest of the names she'd been called online. Their children had begged them to stay off social media completely. The intercom on his desk buzzed. Mr. Bradford, your wife is online too. He sighed deeply. Put her through. William Eleanor's voice was tight with restrained emotion. The Bristols have uninvited us from their gala, the gala we've attended for 15 years. Eleanor, I'm dealing with actual business crises right now. This is serious. Everyone is treating us like we have the plague, all because that woman trapped me into saying things that were taken out of context. William's patience finally snapped. Nothing was taken out of context, Eleanor. You behaved abhorrently, and now we're all paying the price. The company is in crisis. Our reputation is in tatters, and all because you couldn't sit in 1B for one flight. The line went silent for a moment. So you're blaming me, after all I've done for your career, for your social standing, my social standing. The Bristol Gala isn't going to save Bradford Capital from bankruptcy if this continues. We're losing millions by the day. Well, what are you going to do about it? She demanded. William looked at the folder on his desk. Inside was a letter his lawyer had drafted earlier that day, a formal apology to Alexis Donovan and Sky Global Airways, along with a request to meet and discuss a potential resolution. It was humiliating, but it might be the only way to stop the bleeding. I'm going to try to fix it, he said finally. But it won't be quick and it won't be painless. After ending the call, he opened the folder and signed the letter. His assistant would deliver it to Sky Global's headquarters within the hour. Whether Alexis Donovan would even read it remained to be seen. 1 year after the incident that transformed Sky Global Airways. Alexis Donovan sat in seat 1A on a flight from LAX to JFK. She still made these undercover journeys regularly, though less frequently now that the company culture had shifted so dramatically. She was dressed casually again, jeans, a simple blouse, her father's watch. No makeup, hair, pulled back glasses instead of contacts. Just another passenger. A young flight attendant approached. "Ms. Jones, welcome aboard. Can I get you a pre-departure beverage, champagne water or orange juice?" "Champagne would be lovely." "Thank you," she said, glancing at his name tag. "Thank you, David." "Of course," he said with a warm, professional smile. He then turned to the man in 1B who was in a wrinkled t-shirt. "Sir, welcome aboard. Can I get you a pre-departure beverage, champagne water or orange juice?" Alexis watched the exchange carefully. The same smile, the same tone, the same level of respect. Perfect. David returned with her champagne. "Please, let me know if there's anything I can do for you, Ms. Jones. My job is to ensure your safety and comfort." "Thank you, David. I will." As he moved on to other passengers, Alexis made a note on her tablet. F.A. David Thompson. Excellent service. Consistent treatment of all passengers. Genuine warmth. She glanced around the first-class cabin. The passengers represented a diverse cross-section of humanity, different races, ages, styles of dress. Some wore business attire, others casual clothes. All were treated with the same respect by the crew. This was the airline her father had envisioned. This was Sky Global as it should be. Her tablet chimed with a message from Jessica, annual numbers just finalized. Passenger satisfaction up 42%. Employee retention improved 38%. Revenue increased 23% despite loss of some high-status customers. The board sends congratulations. Alexis smiled. The transformation hadn't been easy. There had been difficult conversations, hard decisions, and occasional setbacks. Philip Harrington had indeed tried to retaliate, attempting to organize a shareholder revolt that ultimately failed when the financial results proved Alexis right. William Bradford had eventually secured a meeting with her, arriving humbled and apologetic. They had reached an accord that allowed Bradford Capital to recover somewhat, though it never regained its former prominence. Eleanor Bradford had never apologized, but Alexis hadn't expected her to. Sophia Ramirez now served as Sky Global's Vice President of Customer Experience, the youngest person ever to hold the position. Ryan Martinez led a department focused on equitable service standards. Both had flourished when given the opportunity to align their work with their values. As for Nathan Whitfield, he had found work with a budget airline after months of unemployment. The incident had followed him, making it difficult to secure a position commensurate with his experience. Alexis took no pleasure in his struggles, but actions had consequences, a lesson she hoped he had finally learned. David returned with a warm hand towel. "We'll be taking off shortly, Ms. Jones. Is there anything else you need before departure?" "No, thank you, David. Everything is perfect." And it was. Not because the seat was comfortable or the champagne was premium, but because dignity and respect had become Sky Global's true first-class offering, available to everyone regardless of status or appearance. As the plane accelerated down the runway and lifted into the sky, Alexis raised her glass in a silent toast. "To you, Dad," she whispered. "We're flying people again, not status points." She turned to the window, took a sip, and smiled as her plane began its powerful, clean ascent into the sky. And that is how a single flight and one woman's refusal to be bullied changed an entire airline. Alexis Donovan didn't just fire a prejudiced employee, she tore down the entire rotten structure that protected him and his allies. Eleanor Bradford didn't just lose her seat preference, she learned that no amount of money or status makes you better than the person sitting next to you. This story is a powerful reminder that you never know who you're talking to, and that true integrity isn't about the perks you have, but about how you treat the people who seem to have none. If you've ever been dismissed, disrespected, or discriminated against because of how you look, let this story be your inspiration. True power lies not in status or wealth, but in dignity and character. Share this video if it resonated with you. Hit that like button if you believe in karma, and subscribe for more stories of justice and transformation. Remember, you never know when the person being mistreated might just be signing the paychecks tomorrow.